concrete than on alternative technologies.
Like a massive symbol of an entire era, the world's biggest dam towers above the Yangtze River. In China, the belief in the almighty power of concrete remains unbroken. This new Great Wall of China is 185 meters high and 2.3 kilometers long. China's gargantuan prestige project was built to regulate the flow of Asia's largest river. It'll dam the Yangtze between its upper and middle reaches, just downstream from the famous Three Gorges. The reservoir behind the dam will reach upstream, as far as the city of Chongqing, more than 600 kilometers.
The Yangtze is China's most economically important river, but its flooding causes great devastation, so regulating it is vital both for our society and to maintain ecological balance.
Providing flood control and increasing the river's navigability are two of the main arguments in favor of the project. Another is that the dam will provide clean energy from hydroelectric power. In that sense, the Colossus at Three Gorges offers many of the advantages typical of large dam projects. But it's caused more controversy than any other dam in the world.
It's a mammoth project already in progress. And now all we can do is minimize the ecological damage and ensure a maximum of participation and advantages for the people it affects.
On June the 1st, 2003, the Three Gorges Dam sluice gates were closed. The level of the Yangtze behind them will rise for 6 years.
Such mammoth technological projects have long been thought to embody progress. Politicians saw them as simple solutions to complicated problems, and a welcome opportunity to immortalize themselves in concrete, if not stone. The World Commission on Dams has counted more than 45,000 large dams on Earth, those with a height of at least 15 meters.
But the dam building fever is abating. In both Europe and North America, fewer and fewer dams are being started.
We can count the hydroelectricity generation benefits, the kilowatt hours that are produced from a dam. We can measure and put dollar values on the flood control benefits, but we have no way of producing economic estimates of the social cost from dislocating populations, of causing species to go extinct, of flooding priceless archaeological relics. Economists are really bad at putting costs on those values.
The negative effects of large-scale infrastructure projects usually don't appear until long after they're in place. That's also true of pipelines and canals that divert water across entire countries. Libya's great man-made river exploits fossil reserves under the Sahara to provide water to densely settled areas on the coast. China, India, and a number of other countries are planning huge water transfers that will eclipse even the mega projects of the past.
In In March 2002, hundreds of thousands of people in Spain turned out to protest against the biggest water project in their country's history, the National Hydrological Plan. The government plans to use water from the River Ebro, northern Spain's lifeline, to fulfill the freshwater needs of the faraway south of the country. The city of Saragossa is home to one of the most outspoken opponents of the project, the physicist and economist Pedro Aropo.
Socialmente es un plan brutal.
This plan will have brutal social consequences. It takes resources from the poorest regions in order to make the richest areas on the Mediterranean coast even richer. Areas whose development today is as swift as it is unsustainable.
Spain's National Hydrological Plan envisions tapping the Ebro River just before it flows into the Mediterranean. Pumps and pipelines are to carry the water to Barcelona, as well as to Valencia, Murcia and Almeria, some of the driest zones in Europe. The Ebro Water Authority, a part of Spain's Environment Ministry, helped draw up the plan. It regulates the water supplies of the entire region via a network of weirs and gauging stations. Redistribution is a basic principle of Spain's water policies.
Se llevarían aguas que realmente
Only the water a region doesn't use, what's left over, is transferred out of the region. And the recipients pay a specific fee to protect the environment in the region where the water originated.
pagan un canon que repercute en mejoras ambientales en la cuenca cedente.
The environment in that region needs protection, but the government is planning further dams and reservoirs on the tributaries of the Ebro. The Irati Valley in the region of Navarre is soon to be inundated. People affected by the dam there see themselves as victims of Spain's water planners.
The authorities claim this reservoir will serve to irrigate an extra 57,000 hectares of land here near us in Navarre. But in reality, it serves other interests that don't get mentioned. By damming the Irati, they can regulate the Ebro and divert it.
The village of Ituis was once a symbol of resistance to the dam. In June 2003, the government demolished it, although the planned flooding of the valley was disputed, both technically and legally. But this is about more than just one village and one dam. It's about Spain's national water policies, about the power of the state over a vital resource.
Mammoth projects are nearly always national projects, with governments ordering the construction. Deep in the south of Egypt, near Abu Simbel, stands a colossus of steel and concrete, a temple of technology. The Mubarak pumping station is considered the largest in the world. It's the core of what's known as the Toshka project, another monumental water transfer scheme. This showpiece for the Egyptian government in Cairo extracts water from the most important river in eastern Africa, the Nile, where it forms Lake Nasser behind the Aswan High Dam. The water flows through an intricate system of canals into the Toshka Depression to irrigate crops.
Reclaiming this parched land has been a dream of the Egyptians for millennia. In a country that's 95% desert, farms, settlements, and even a city are to be built along the concrete-lined canals that have been dug during the past 6 years. It's a hugely expensive national prestige project in the style of the pharaohs, and it's created jobs and raised hopes.
The region will become fertile, the desert will be green, the whole country will profit.
By early 2003, the government was able to demonstrate that the Toshka project is technically feasible. A large part of the 250-kilometer canal system has now been finished and water is flowing through it. But it's doubtful whether the large-scale artificial irrigation of an arid region makes sense, either economically or politically.
Egypt is extremely water short. 97% of the water that Egypt gets is water in the Nile, and it originates outside of its borders. And almost all of Egypt's water goes to agricultural production, much of it inefficient. I think it might be a mistake for Egypt to be expanding agricultural production with its scarce water.
From the air, you could easily get the impression that this part of Germany has water in overabundance. In fact, Lusatia, or the Lausitz region in southeastern Saxony, is one of the driest in the country. Only massive human intervention and a huge transfer of water filled these lakes. A mammoth project intended to restore what had been damaged countryside. Before German reunification, this region produced most of eastern Germany's energy. It was rich in lignite, or brown coal. Decades of open-cast mining left huge scars on the landscape.
Now a large-scale project is changing the face of the region. Dozens of former mines are being turned into a series of lakes. A complex system of pumps, conduits and weirs has been constructed. It diverts water from nearby rivers to the craters left by open-cast mining.
Restoring the landscape is an enormous technical challenge. A process called vibrocompaction, which shapes loose, granular soils into a denser configuration, is used to stabilize slopes that might otherwise slide down. The water quality still needs to be improved by adding lime or using other, newer technical methods. The soil in the Lausitz region has a high sulfur content, so the new bodies of water have a tendency to acidify. Life can only be sustained in them after the water is treated.
What's envisioned when all is finished is a landscape of lakes. Future generations will probably scarcely be able to imagine that a massive hydrological project was needed to change the face of nature here.
Back to Spain. Ramon Carles is worried about nature in the Ebro Delta. He earns a living from it, farming shellfish, and he's against the National Hydrological Plan. The mixture of salt and fresh water in the delta is ideal for his mussels and oysters. He's already feeling the effects of the river's diversion.
Cada vez viene menos agua.
Less and less water from the Ebro arrives here. That means fewer nutrients and less growth for the shellfish. We can't allow more water to be diverted. It's against nature. The water just can't go anywhere else.
It's a conflict between two regions. Spain's thirsty south is just waiting for water. Take Murcia, for example. It's an area with two faces. There's the desert, which every farmer has to fight against in order to save every square meter of arable land. Some almond groves have had to be abandoned because they were no longer profitable.
And then there are the plantations, which grow fruit for the markets of Europe. The government faces accusations that it wants even more intensive farming.
El agua del Ebro para Murcia pues supondrá como
The water from the Ebro lets us maintain and consolidate our current prosperity.
la riqueza que en este momento hay.
But it's not being used to irrigate new land or divert the water to holiday regions or golf courses. That's all forbidden by law.
Porque todo ello está prohibido por ley.
Our problem isn't a water deficit. Our problem is the uncontrolled growth of irrigated areas and the increasing use of water by cities and tourists. And this unsustainable development will get worse if more water goes to them because of projects like the Ebro transfer.
The National Hydrological Plan is dividing Spain into two camps, pitting the regions it affects against each other. But in other countries, mammoth water projects can stretch beyond their own borders and risk provoking international conflicts.
It's hard to predict what effect Egypt's Toshka project will have on the hydrological balance of the region's environment. Theoretically, 10% of the annual inflow into Lake Nasser could be pumped into the desert. But what if water from the Nile becomes scarce? If one day the countries on the Upper Nile, Sudan and Ethiopia, launch similar projects?
Egypt argues that it can save water for Toshka on its own, above all by using efficient irrigation methods. The Kingdom Agricultural Development Company, CADCO, owned by Saudi billionaire Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, is trying to find out which crops grow best in this extreme desert climate. CADCO hopes to do a lucrative business in Europe and in the Gulf states. But for Egypt itself, there's more at stake.
A lot of activities will be there, not only agriculture, but agriculture, industries, tourism, services, many activities, which will absorb a large number of workers there. And this is one very important target for Egypt.
It's especially important because Egypt is so densely populated. Nearly all its 70 million people live along the banks of the Nile. It's hoped Toshka will open a new frontier.
There's very little direct criticism. After all, the project has been given top priority. The opposition only warns that Egypt might overreach itself financially.
Their intentions aren't bad. The question is, what will it cost? We disagree with the government on the timing of the Toshka project. If the Egyptian economy is strong, we can do it. But if we have to tighten our belts, we stand to lose a lot.
Toshka is diverting financial resources away from other public investments in education, the economy and infrastructure. But whatever else it turns into, the prestige project will be a monument to the government. For better or worse, only time will tell.
In January 2002, the town of Fangjie paid a high price for China's Millennium Project, the Three Gorges Dam. 1,300 villages and a dozen cities shared Fangjie's fate. They were completely destroyed, so their remains wouldn't pollute the rising waters of the new reservoir.
More than 1.3 million people lost their homes. They took with them roofing tiles, iron, anything they could use to make a new start. An historic resettlement operation had begun. Higher up, a Above the future lake, a new town awaited the people from the riverbanks. Everyone had a right to government aid, but especially in rural areas, people felt the state had let them down.
When we complained, some of us were imprisoned, even women. We have no land, we have no place to live, and we were cheated out of our compensation money. It's a miserable life.
What's infuriating about the project is that a group of corrupt officials can pocket lots of money and then take no responsibility for anything.
Times have changed in the Yangtze Gorges. Many cultural treasures, like the temple of the poet Liu Yo, will be lost forever. Travelers will never see these sites again. For all the good it may bring, the Three Gorges Dam is a monument to the dark side of our triumph over nature.
To make sure we don't repeat the mistakes of the past, the World Commission on Dams has developed criteria and principles for future large projects. They include more transparency, more democratic decision-making, and fair compensation for those affected. But in fact, we already know that for almost every mega project, there's an alternative. Several industrialized nations are even reversing the process.
We're already beginning to take down dams all over the world. In the United States, 500 dams have already been removed, almost all very small dams, but nevertheless, we're starting to restore some of the natural environment that's been lost from all of these projects.
This is a picture of Hetch Hetchy Valley in Yosemite National Park as it should be, with the wildflowers and the meadow grasses. And this is what we have today, this water tank for the city of San Francisco. This place deserves to be enjoyed by people all over the world. It should not be a private enclave just for the city of San Francisco.
Environmentalists have long fought to have this dam removed. Now, at least, tearing it down no longer seems impossible. Restoring natural beauty may be a luxury, given the needs of developing countries, but it does send a signal.